Hello again, my name's Wade, aka the Past Caring Coach, and I am a Masters powerlifter who has represented England, an International Powerlifting Federation Level 2 coach and a Level 3 PT, as well as an IPF referee. This is the second in a series of 3 videos on the first competition day experience for powerlifters. In this video, I'm going to talk in some detail about the rules. In the previous video, I touched upon the fact that before you start competing, you need to be aware that there are a number of different powerlifting federations and that they all have their own different rules. Most notably, some federations are drug tested and some are not. A number of federations apply testing, but they will each apply their own different testing protocols. And where federations do not have testing, this means that the users of performance enhancing drugs can and may legitimately take part in those competitions. Aside from the drug testing requirements, there are other differences in the rules between different federations, and you need to be aware of those differences when you sign up for a competition in a particular federation. For example, the IPF, as well as applying full WADA compliant random drug tests, requires lifters to walk out their squats rather than use a monolift. In the bench press, lifters are required to keep their feet flat on the floor and head on the bench throughout the lift. Now, these and other requirements are not universal across all federations, and there may be differences in the attire and equipment that is allowed in a particular federation. The weigh-in requirements may differ, with some federations having 24-hour weigh-ins and others only 2. And there are a number of other differences. So you need to be aware of your federation's requirements and rules so you don't fall foul of them when you lift. In this video, I'm going to talk about the IPF rules again, as the International Powerlifting Federation has the most lifters worldwide and is the single powerlifting governing body recognised by the International Olympic Committee. This means that if powerlifting, which does have Olympic recognition through the IPF, is ever going to become a full Olympic sport, it will be the IPF that is the governing federation, and only IPF lifters will be allowed to take part, as other federations are not fully compliant with Olympic drug testing protocols. Competitions will be contested between males and females in a number of age and weight classes. The competition lifts are the squat, the bench press and the deadlift, and those lifts will be completed in that specific order. When entering your first competition, you should note that you may see bench-only competitions advertised, and there may be push-pull competitions, which feature bench press and deadlifts only, and you may also see equipped competitions advertised. Equipped events allow the use of supportive bench shirts, squat suits and supportive knee wraps, as opposed to knee sleeves. Most people start in a classic full power competition. This is a squat, bench and deadlift competition without the supportive suits and knee wraps used in the equipped lifting, but with knee sleeves, wrist wraps and a belt allowed. Due to it being the most popular form of competition, I'm going to address the rules as they relate to IPF classic full power lifting. It is important to mention the different types of competition so you don't enter the wrong type of competition by accident. So when entering, look for a full power classic meet, unless of course you want to bench only or lift equipped. Lifters will have 3 attempts at the squat, 3 attempts at the bench press and 3 attempts at the deadlift. The lifter's best valid attempt on each lift contributes to the final competition total. The highest total in each weight class wins that weight class. If 2 or more lifters achieve the same total, the lighter lifter ranks above the heavier lifter. As the sport has weight classes, and lifters may of course try to optimise their performance and outcomes by cutting weight to make a lower weight class, there's the obvious possibility of 2 lifters weighing in at the same weight and lifting exactly the same totals. As a result, lifters are given a random lot number at the start of the competition, and in the event of 2 lifters having the same total and weighing in at the same weight, the lifter with the highest lot number will take the higher placing. To register a total, you must complete at least 1 good squat, 1 good bench press and 1 good deadlift from your 9 total lifts. You cannot register a total if you do not hit one good squat, one good bench press and one good deadlift. But you will, however, be allowed to carry on and complete all 9 attempts if you miss, say, all 3 squats or all 3 bench presses. Lifts are refereed by a chief referee or centre referee who sits in the centre at the front of the platform, and by 2 side referees. Each referee will award a white light for a good lift and a red light for a failed lift. Ideally, you want all 3 referees to give you white lights, but white lights from just 2 referees will also constitute a good lift. 2 reds or 3 reds will constitute a failed lift. Now, the IPF rules are unfortunately a bit of a mess and they don't follow any logical order. So I'm going to start by talking about the kit that you can and cannot wear. The reason I'm starting with the kit is because if your kit is not in compliance with the rules, you won't even be allowed onto the platform to lift. Kit checks will be completed by referees before the start of the event, and I've covered certain aspects of the kit check in the first of my competition day videos. I'll apologise in advance because there will be a little bit of repetition. An IPF approved singlet needs to be worn, and what is approved is set out in the IPF's approved list, which is available on its website. A number of retailers advertise IPF approved kit, so if you're buying, this is a great place to start because you'll have everything you need as a bare minimum, and buying a package typically makes things cheaper, which is neat if you simply want to dip your toe in and try a powerlifting competition to see if powerlifting is for you. The rules set out the full details of what is acceptable in terms of the singlet's shape, its size, its materials and so forth. But if it isn't approved, you can't wear it. So simply look for something that says IPF approved on it, and you can find the right size, find a nice colour that you like, and you don't need to worry about things like the material it's made of, how long the legs are or how thick it needs to be, and other restrictions that are set out within the rules. Powerlifting bars have knurling, which can tear the skin and spread germs. So for hygiene purposes, the rules insist that you must wear a plain t-shirt under the singlet. The sleeves need to be tight-fitting, and the rules show a picture of what is permissible in that regard. The logic behind this is that if the sleeves are too long and or too baggy, this will make it harder for referees to call elbow depth on a bench press. The rules also set out what can be printed on the t-shirt. This is designed to avoid offensive slogans or advertising that isn't for IPF approved sponsors who have paid for the privilege of advertising their wares. And it must be made of non-supportive fabric. Get a plain cotton, one-coloured, round neck t-shirt with tight fitting sleeves, no pockets, no zips or buttons, and ensure that nothing is embroidered on it. If you have that, you'll be absolutely fine. Now, a standard commercial athletic supporter or standard commercial briefs of any mixture of cotton, nylon or polyester must be worn under the lifting suit, and women may also wear a commercial or sports bra. Swimming trunks or any garment consisting of rubberized or similar stretch material, except in the waistband, cannot be worn under the lifting costume. This could be deemed as supportive material, and this lack of supportive equipment is what distinguishes classic lifting from equipped, where the suits, shirts and briefs are designed to give support to your lift and will allow you to lift more. Any supportive undergarment is not legal for use in IPF competition. There are photographs in the rules showing what underwear is permissible. If you wear briefs and not boxer shorts, you'll be fine. Short or long socks can be worn in the squat and bench press if you wish, but full shin-length socks must be worn to cover and protect the shins while performing the deadlift. Now, the ideal deadlift bar path is the shortest route from floor to lockout. And if you're doing it right, that's a nice perpendicular straight line right up the shin. Shins bleeding on the bar are not hygienic, and so long deadlifting socks are mandatory. Don't forget to change into them if you don't wear socks in the squat and bench press, or if you wear short socks for those lifts. If you don't, you'll be sent off the platform and told to change. Now, you won't get disqualified, but no way are you exiting the platform and getting properly kitted out and back onto the lift in the minute allocated for your lift. Your lift will be timed out and red lighted, so do not forget your deadlift socks. Socks may have any colour or colours and may have manufacturers' logos on them, but they must be IPF approved. They must cover the length of the shin, but must not come into contact with the knee sleeves, if you choose to wear knee sleeves, which are not compulsory. Full-length stockings, tights or hose are strictly forbidden. However, please be aware that while you can't wear those sexy stockings and suspenders, guys or girls, approved full-length singlets are now available, and they can be worn by any lifter, male or female. Deadlift socks and knee sleeves, if used, must be worn over these full-length singlets, and if you choose to use such a singlet, it must be worn for all 3 lifts. Light protective shin guards between socks and shins may be worn. If you wish, you can wear a lifting belt, and the rules set out how long, how wide and how thick it must be, and the types of fasteners that can be used. Again, get an IPF approved belt and that will satisfy all of the requirements. Shoes or boots must be worn. No bare feet are allowed on the platform, and you cannot wear just socks. This avoids the spread of infections. The shoes you wear do not have to be IPF approved, but you can only wear indoor sports shoes or sports boots. This means weightlifting or powerlifting boots, trainers, the powerlifters' favourites Chuck Tees, or deadlift slippers. The term indoor sports shoes is designed to include things like wrestling boots, basketball boots and the aforementioned Chuck Tees, and it's worded to outlaw things like work boots and hiking boots. A heel is permitted, but no part of the underside of the shoe can be higher than 5 centimetres. Now the underside must be flat with no projections or irregularities, and the shoe cannot be doctored from the standard design. Loose inner soles that are not part of the manufactured shoe are allowed, but can be no more than 1 centimetre thick. Socks with a rubber outside sole lining are not allowed. Knee sleeves, which are described in the rules as cylinders of neoprene, may be worn on the knees only. No elbow sleeves are allowed. Knee wraps are only permitted in equipped competition. The reason is that the tightness and elastication they provide will give some support and bounce, and that will increase your numbers. Only knee sleeves from manufacturers on the IPF approved list are permitted. The rules set out more details about sleeves, but once again, when shopping, look for IPF approved sleeves and you'll be perfectly fine. When worn by the lifter in competition, knee sleeves must not be in contact with the lifter's suit, other than the approved long-legged suits. They cannot come into contact with the socks and must be centred over the knee joint. You can wear knee sleeves over a full-length singlet, but not underneath it. Wrist wraps can be worn, and the details of the approved lengths, widths and other specifications are once again set out in the rules. As before, get approved wrist wraps and you'll be fine. A combination of wrist wraps and sweatbands is not allowed. Wrist wraps, when worn, should not extend beyond 10 centimetres above and 2 centimetres below the centre of the wrist joint, and cannot exceed a covering width of 12 centimetres. Hats cannot be worn on the platform during lifting, but lifters may wear a hijab, headscarf while lifting, and some trendy types like to wear headbands, which are not prohibited in the rules. In the bench press, referees may require a lifter with long hair to arrange it in such a way that they can properly see that the head remains in contact with the bench throughout the lift. 2 layers of medical tape may be worn around the thumbs. Medical tape or similar may not be worn anywhere else on the body without the permission of the referees. Now, medical tape may not be used to aid the lifter in the holding of the bar. The use of oil, grease or other lubricants on the body or personal equipment is strictly forbidden. Baby powder, resin, talc or magnesium carbonate, chalk, are the only substances that may be added to the body and to your attire. The use of any form of adhesive on the underside of footwear is strictly forbidden. This applies to any built-in adhesive, for example glass paper, emery cloth, etc., and any resin or chalk that's used, and it cannot be placed under the shoes. A spray of water is acceptable. Nothing can be applied to the powerlifting equipment other than those materials used for the cleaning of the bar, bench or platform. That's the attire and the lifting equipment taken care of. Let's move on to the weigh-in rules. Weigh-in of the competitors must take place no earlier than 2 hours before the start of the competition for a flight of lifters. Lifters will be allocated to flights of between 6 and 14 lifters. Flights are typically based upon weight classes and sex, but there's no reason why a flight cannot have mixed weight classes and contain both male and female lifters, and the makeup of the flights typically depends upon the number of entrants. You will be advised of your flight and the weigh-in time for your flight by the organisers. This will be after the closing date for entries, when they know how many intend to take part and when they have determined how best to arrange the flights. The reason lifters are put into flights is to allow appropriate rest periods between lifts. It does depend on the numbers entering, but in a typical competition there will be 2 flights in the morning and 2 in the afternoon, sometimes 3. Now the first flight of lifters in the morning will complete their 3 squats, and the second flight will follow immediately afterwards, completing their 3 squats. There will then be a 10-minute break, and the first flight will bench, followed immediately again by the second. After both flights have benched, there will be a further 10-minute break, and both flights will complete their deadlifts. There will probably then be a break for lunch, with the afternoon flights weighing in, and the lifting will follow the same pattern as the morning from the 2-hour weigh-in and leading up to the first lift of the afternoon session. It is important to know that all lifters in a flight must attend the weigh-in at their appointed time, which will be advised by the organisers when the entries are closed, and the weigh-in will be carried out by appointed referees. The lot numbers that I mentioned earlier will be used to establish the order of weigh-in by the organisers. The lots drawn at random also establish the order of lifting throughout the competition should 2 lifters in the same flight request the same weights for their attempts in a round. The weigh-in period will start 2 hours before the first lift and will last for a period of 1.5 hours. This will allow the referees to weigh everyone in and for the scorers then to enter the weigh-in details onto the event computer during the last 30 minutes of the 2-hour period. The weigh-in for each competitor will be carried out in a room with the door closed, with only the competitor, his coach or a chaperone of the same sex and the referees present. For reasons of hygiene, the lifter should wear socks, or a paper towel should be placed on the scales platform when they are weighing in. Where you are concerned that you may be over the weight limit, you may request to weigh in naked. Each lifter may only be weighed once, except where a lifter's body weight is heavier or lighter than the limits of the category that they have entered. In these cases, they must return to the scales and make weight within the limits of the 1.5 hours allowed for the weigh-in. Otherwise, they'll be eliminated from the competition. Now, they may be permitted to enter as a guest, but they will not be eligible for prizes. A lifter can only be re-weighed as often as time allows. A lifter can be weighed outside of the time limit of 1.5 hours if they present themselves within the time limit, but due to the number of lifters trying to make weight, they are denied the opportunity to get onto the scales. They may be allowed 1 re-weigh-in at the discretion of the referees in that time. A lifter may only weigh in the category in which they were originally nominated 21 days prior to the meet date. So if you want to change your weight class after you've entered, you need to advise the organisers before the expiry of the 21-day limit. Lifters should check squat and bench press rack heights and foot blocks where they require them prior to the start of the competition on a rack which will be made available by the organisers. The rack height sheet must be signed or initialed after the check by the lifter or coach. A copy of this official document goes to the announcer and the platform manager to allow them to set the rack heights during the competition. At the weigh-in, the lifter or their coach must also declare an opening weight for all 3 lifts. These openers can be changed up to 3 minutes before the start of the flight. Now, responsibility for submitting attempts within the time limits thereafter, which is up to 1 minute after the lifter completes a lift and leaves the platform, rests solely with the lifter or the coach. At novice and local events, you may get prompted by the scorer's desk if you don't submit an attempt after completing a lift, but the onus is on you, and they are under no obligation to prompt or remind you to submit your next attempt. The bar must be loaded progressively during each round on the principle of a rising bar, so the weight will not go down except in a few exceptional circumstances, and I won't go into those in this video in any detail, but they are typically the result of accidental misloads where a lifter can be offered an additional attempt at the end of a flight. Lifting order within each round will be determined by the lifter's choice of weight for that specific round. The lifter in the flight choosing the lowest weight will lift first. In the event of two lifters choosing the same weight, the lifter with the lowest lot number drawn at the weigh-in will lift first. If no weight is submitted within the 1 minute time allowance after the lifter has left the platform, the lifter will automatically be given a 2.5 kilo increase on their next attempt. Should the lifter have failed a previous attempt, the bar will be loaded to the weight that they have just failed again. Now, a lifter cannot apply wraps, adjust the costume, or use smelling salts within the view of the public. You can, however, adjust your belt on the platform. If you need a slap from your coach or a handler to psych you up, that has to be done away from the public view as well. You should also note that getting wildly psyched up before a lift is fine, but swearing on the platform will lead to disqualification. In IPF recognised competitions, the weight of the barbell, collars and plates must always be multiples of 2.5 kilos unless attempts are made on records. In squat, bench press and deadlift, the progression must be at least 2.5 kilos between all attempts. In a record attempt, the weight of the barbell plus collars and plates must be at least 0.5 kilos in excess of the current record. On the completion of an attempt, you must leave the platform within 30 seconds. There is an element of discretion for referees who can allow a little longer if a lifter is injured or if a lifter has a disability. For example, they are blind and need a guide. Now to the rules of performance for the individual lifts. Starting with the squat, when the bar is loaded is called by the centre referee, the lifter will be allowed onto the platform by the technical controller and they have 1 minute to enter the platform and complete their squat. The bar must be held horizontally across the shoulders, hands and fingers must grip the bar. This permits thumb over grip, favoured by many lifters, as well as the regular thumb around grip. Hands can be positioned anywhere on the bar inside or in contact with the inner collars. After unracking the bar, the lifter must move backwards and establish their starting position, and when motionless and standing erect, a slight forward lean is allowed. With the knees locked, the chief referee can then give the signal for the lifter to begin the squat. As the walkout commences, all three referees will raise a hand. The two side referees will lower their hand when satisfied that the lifter has reached the appropriate start position. The centre referee will observe the signals from the side, and when also satisfied that the appropriate starting position has been reached, lower their hand as the signal to commence the lift, and they will simultaneously give the audible command, squat. Before receiving the signal to squat, the lifter may make any positional changes, but this may delay the start command, so settle quickly and stand still. For reasons of safety, the lifter will receive an audible replace command together with a backward movement of the arm if after a period of 5 seconds they are not in the correct position for the centre referee to be able to give the start command to begin the lift. It typically takes more than 5 seconds for a lifter to settle, and the referees tend to be quite lenient with this. The chief referee will then give the reason why the starting signals were not given. The lifter may then unrack the bar and recommence their lift. The 1 minute allowed for the lift will continue to run throughout and the clock will not be stopped. Upon receiving the chief referee's signal, the lifter must bend the knees and lower the body until the top surface of the legs at the hip joint is lower than the top of the knees. Once you start the squat, only one attempt is allowed. The attempt is deemed to have commenced when the lifter's knees have unlocked and the lifter must stand back up to an upright position with the knees locked. Double bouncing at the bottom of the squat or any downward movement is not permitted. When the lifter is motionless after completing the squat, the chief referee will give the signal to rack the bar, which will consist of a backward motion of the arm and give the audible command, rack. The lifter must then return the bar to the racks. Any foot movement after the rack command will not lead to red lights being given. Upon completion of the lift, spotters and loaders may help the lifter replace the bar in the rack. Now the lifter must stay with the bar during this process, and the lifter is not allowed to walk out through the front of the rack after the completion of the lift. Now I'm going to move on to causes for disqualification of a squat, which are a failure to observe the chief referee's signal at the commencement or completion of a lift, i.e. starting before the squat command and racking the weight before the rack command, any double bouncing at the bottom of the lift, or any downward movement of the bar during the ascent. If the bar slightly stalls partway through the lift but there's no downward movement, that's a good lift. Failure to assume an upright position with the knees locked at the commencement or completion of the lift will get you red lights. Stepping backward or forward or moving the feet laterally after the squat command has been given and before the rack command has been given will lead to a lift being failed, but rocking the feet between the ball and the heel is permitted. Any failure to achieve the appropriate depth will get you red lights. That means not lowering the body until the top surface of the legs at the hip joint are lower than the top of the knees, and contact with the bar or the lifter by the spotters or loaders between the chief referee's signals in order to make the lift easier will also get red lights. Any accidental contact will not result in the lift being failed by the referees. Now spotters are advised that the safety of lifters and spotters always comes first, but they must wait for the referee to give a signal to rack the bar before grabbing it. Now occasionally they may grab the bar before the signal from the referees, either due to safety worries or anticipating the failure of the lift. And they may accidentally interfere with the lift. In this case, the lifter may be offered the opportunity to retake the lift at the end of the flight. Contact of the elbows or upper arm with the leg will get red lights, although slight contact is permitted if there's no supporting that may aid the lift. Any deliberate dropping or dumping of the bar after the completion of the lift will get you red lights. This may also get you disqualified for endangering the spotters. A good squat sees the crease of the hip below the top of the knee. And to avoid any doubt, you should attempt to get to the depth where it's clear and obvious. Very often you'll see one of the side referees call the squat depth good and the other fail the lift. It's all about angles and how they see the lift. What the front referee sees can differ from the side views because angles can be deceptive, and there are some great examples of squats at competitions which look high from the front on the camera but are very clearly to depth from the side view. Now some squatters also have imbalances and they may only hit depth on one side. The key thing to emphasise is that if you want to get an absolute guarantee that your squats get white lights, start squatting like an Olympic weightlifter where you get your backside close to the floor. Obviously in doing this you're probably going to go down further than the rules require, and that will make it harder for yourself, but more is always better because what you consider to be just enough referees might not be convinced by. As regards the failure to assume an upright position with the knees locked at the commencement and the completion of the lift, the knees need to be locked out, but you are permitted a slight forward lean with the bar on your back at the start and the finish of the lift. What constitutes a slight forward lean is not set out in the rules, and the referees will use their discretion, and they will ask you to re-rack the bar and ask you to stand up straighter if they don't consider that you're standing upright enough. Now lifters using extreme low bar or French low bar squats as they are often known tend to lean quite far forward, and this can lead to a bar sliding off the lifter's back and endangering the spotters. So where a referee thinks that the lean is excessive or unsafe, they will order a re-rack. Failure to assume an upright position at the start and finish includes fidgeting. Moving around before the start of the squat means that you won't get the start command. So walk it out, stand still and only have a slight forward lean. Upon completion of the squat, stand up straight and stand still, or you may not get the rack command. If you attempt to replace the bar before the rack command, you'll get red lights. As I suggested, the bar can stall mid-lift, and also one side may continue to rise quicker than the other to lock out, but unless there's any downward movement, the lift will be fine. Unless the reason for the lift being failed is obvious, to enable you to make adjustments for your next attempt, it's a good idea to ask the referees awarding the red lights why they failed your lift. One referee may have failed it for soft knees at lockout, while the other may have given you a red light for downward movement or foot movement or something else. So it helps to be clear. Do not be afraid to ask. Do not anticipate the commands and start before you hear the commands. If you don't get the start or rack command immediately, the likelihood is that the referees are unhappy with some aspect of your setup. An incomplete lift will get you red lights. This is pretty obvious. If your lift stops at a sticking point and the spotters are forced to help you get the bar back onto the rack, you'll get a red light. All failed lifts will get a red light, but that red light will be accompanied by an additional advisory light. Now the advisory light will be red, yellow or blue, and that should help to tell you why the lift has failed. Now the rules set out the reasons for the lift failures and the colours of the additional advisory lights. If you don't squat to depth, that's a simple one. The referee who is unhappy with the depth will indicate this by red lighting the lift and also giving you an advisory red light. The problem is that there are 2 instances where you will get an accompanying blue light for failing the squat and 7 instances where you will get an accompanying yellow light for failing the squat. As a result, it may not be obvious to you why the lift has been failed. So if you fail a lift, ask the referees why. All 3 may have failed the lift for different reasons and you don't want to come back onto the platform for your next attempt and repeat one of those failings. At higher level competitions, there will be a jury and you and your coach may be able to challenge the red lights, so it's important to know why your lift was failed. Let's move on to the bench press. Now the rules of the bench press require the chief referee to position themselves close to the bench at the end where your head will rest. And the lifter is not allowed to enter the rack from the head side of the bench press or place their feet on the bench during the setup. This is designed to stop some of the circus acts you would occasionally see where lifters would swing through the rack and set up and climb all over the bench. Now the bar is loaded, is called, and as with the squat, the lifter has 1 minute to enter the platform and complete their bench press. The lifter must lie on their back with head, shoulders and buttocks in contact with the surface of the bench throughout the lift. Now the picture included in the rules shows the proper starting position. Now the feet must be flat on the floor or as flat as the shape of the shoe will allow, and hands and fingers must grip the bar positioned in the rack stands with the thumb around grip. Now many lifters with shoulder or elbow injuries like to use different grips to relieve discomfort. But you cannot use a reverse grip, you cannot use a suicide grip or thumbless grip, or a grip where the thumb sits along the bar. If a load slips out of the hands, the spotters may not be able to react, and that load will be on your chest, and that would be extremely dangerous. The lifter may use blocks not exceeding 30 centimeters in height to raise their feet. After correctly positioning themselves, the lifter may enlist the help of the spotters and loaders in removing the bar from the racks, or they may take a self handoff. Now the lift off can be from a single spotter or 2 spotters giving a side handoff. The lift off, if assisted by the spotters and loaders, must be to arm's length. Both of your forefingers must be in contact with the 81 centimeter rings on the bar if the maximum grip is to be used. As a referee, if I can see the rings on the bar, if you are using a maximal width grip, you are not getting the start command because your hands are too wide. After removing the bar from the racks, with or without the help of the spotters, the lifter must wait with straight arms and elbows locked for the chief referee's signal. The signals should be given as soon as the lifter is motionless and the bar is properly positioned. All three referees will raise a hand as the lifter sets up and settles ready to lift. The side referees will lower their hands when they are satisfied that the lifter has assumed the correct starting position. At that point, the chief referee will lower their hands and simultaneously give an audible start command to allow the lift to commence. Now the lifter will be given an audible replace command together with a backward movement of the arm if after a period of 5 seconds they are not in the correct position to begin the lift. Now the chief referee will then explain why the start command was not given. The 1 minute allocated for the lift will continue to run throughout and the clock will not be stopped. After receiving the start command, the lifter must lower the bar to the chest or abdominal area to the point where the underside of both elbow joints is lowered level with or below the top surface of each respective shoulder joint. The pictures in the rules show what is acceptable and what is not. Once the bar reaches the chest or abdomen, the lifter should hold the bar motionless, after which the chief referee will give an audible press command and the lifter must return the bar to straight arm's length with the elbows locked. When held motionless in this position, the audible command rack can be given together with a backward motion of the arm. If the bar is lowered to the belt or does not touch the chest or abdominal area, the chief referee will give the rack command and the lift will be ruled as incomplete and given a red light. A bench press will get red lights for the following reasons. Any failure to observe the chief referee's signal at the commencement, during or completion of the lift, so don't start the bench press, press the bar or rack it before you get the commands. Any changes in the elected lifting position during the lift proper, so any raising movement of the head, shoulders or buttocks from the bench or lateral movement of the hands on the bar will get you red lights. Any heaving or sinking the bar into the chest or abdominal area after it's motionless in such a way as to make the lift easier by using the chest to heave the bar up will get you a red light. Any downward movement of the whole of the bar in the course of it being pressed out will also see a red light. As with the squat, contact with the bar or the lifter by the spotters and loaders, anywhere between the chief referee's start and rack signals, in order to make the lift easier, will get a red light. Any accidental touches won't be an issue. Any contact of the lifter's feet with the bench or its supports will get you a red light. Any lifting of the feet will also get you a red light, although foot movement is permissible, but the feet must remain flat on the platform. Now, deliberate contact between the bar and the uprights will cause a lift to be failed, but accidental contact between the bar and the rack is not grounds for failing a lift. Failure to lower the underside of both elbow joints level with or below the top surface of each respective shoulder joint will see the lift red lighted. Now the rules are very poorly written. Where's the top of the shoulder joint? But some clarity comes from the accompanying photographs that need to be used in conjunction with the written rules. In practice, if you can arch, aim for the biggest arch you can to create the most stability and bracing and to reduce the range of motion and move the most weight, while still allowing your elbows to reach parallel. If you do that, you'll be fine. Now the rules require the lifter's buttocks to be in contact with the bench throughout the lift. It is important to note that the contact can be minimal as long as it is continuous throughout the lift. This allows for minuscule contact at the line where the glute meets the hamstring, and this enables the lifter to produce the highest arch. Any downward movement of the whole of the bar in the course of it being pressed out will get you red lights. Failure to press the bar to straight arm's length, elbows locked at the completion of the lift, will also result in red lights. Heaving or sinking the bar after it's been motionless on the chest or abdominal area in such a way as to aid the lift will get red lights. This is to stop lifters using a big sinking movement, taking the bar into the chest and throwing the chest into the lift to get momentum and popping the bar off the chest. As with the squats, the red lights in the bench will be accompanied by an additional advisory red, blue or yellow light. These explain why the lift has been failed. The reasons and matching colours are set out in the rules, but ask the referee if it isn't obvious why the lift has been failed. As with the squat, the blue and yellow lights cover a multitude of reasons for failure. Finally, let's now look at the requirements for the performance of the deadlift. Now the lifter must face the front of the platform with the bar laid horizontally in front of the lifter's feet. The bar can be gripped with an optional grip in both hands and must be lifted until the lifter is standing erect. On completion of the lift, the knees shall be locked in a straight position and with the shoulders back. While many sumo pullers in particular force the shoulders way back at the lockout, this does not mean that you need to stand up with your back in some sort of huge exaggerated arch. You should, however, make an effort to lock the knees and make sure that the body is nice and straight and upright. The shoulders should not be slouched forward in front of the chest and internally rotated. They need to be clearly well back. Unlike the squat and the bench press, there's no start command in the deadlift. When the bar is loaded is called, you have a minute to complete the lift and you must walk onto the platform, complete your setup and lift the weight. However, the chief referee will raise a hand when the lift commences and will lower that hand and give an audible command of down when satisfied that the bar is held motionless and that the lifter is in an appropriate locked out position at the top of the lift. At that point, you should lower the bar. If the plates are seen to rise off the floor or there is any deliberate attempt made to lift it, that will count as an attempt, and once the attempt has begun, no downward movement is allowed until the lifter reaches the erect position with the knees locked out and the shoulders back. Yes, you should pull the slack out of the bar, but if the plates leave the floor doing that and you drop the bar and then pull it again, that's effectively a double pull and you'll get red lights. If the weights on the bar start to settle as the shoulders come back, giving slight downward movement on completion, there should not be any reason to disqualify the lift. Any downward movement of the bar before it reaches the final position will get a red light, as will failure to stand erect with the shoulders back and any failure to lock the knees straight at the completion of the lift. Now, supporting the bar on the thighs during the performance of the lift, also known as ramping, will get you red lights. But where the bar slides and edges up the thigh, but is not supported, this is fine. If you aren't sure what ramping is, here's a video of a strongman style lift where the ramping is clear and obvious. In strongman competitions, ramping is allowed, but in powerlifting it's not. Now it's important to note that you can slide the bar up the thighs and the upward motion of the bar in the lift does not have to be continuous. There just has to be no downward motion. Stepping backward or forward or moving the feet laterally before the down command will get red lights. Rocking the feet between the ball and the heel, however, is permitted. Lowering the bar before the chief referee's signal will prompt red lights, as will allowing the bar to return to the platform without maintaining control with both hands. So releasing the bar from the palms of the hands will get you reds. While you do need to hold on to the bar all the way up and all the way down, there's no rule saying that you have to slowly lower the bar and politely return it to the ground. You just have to maintain control and hold on throughout. Obviously, if you do lower it slowly and gently, you'll be clearly in control. As with the squat and bench press, where a deadlift is failed, you'll get a red light. You'll also get an accompanying red, blue or yellow light. As before, the reasons for the different coloured lights are set out in the rules, but if you aren't sure what the reds were for, ask the referee, as the blue and yellow lights again cover a number of failures. Now there are a number of other rules, but for your first competition, these are the ones you'll really need to be aware of. Hopefully this has been useful. Please do the like and subscribe thing, and for coaching inquiries, please contact me through the email appearing on the screen now. Thanks once again, and I'll see you soon.